Hello and welcome to Matcha Mornings, part of the Wander Barn Podcast Network. I'm your host, Amanda Kingsmith, and I'm excited to dive deep on topics around holistic health, the power of food, hormone health, how the practices of yoga can impact our health and well-being, and much more. So grab your cup of tea, settle in, and let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome back for another episode of Matcha Mornings. I am super excited that you're tuning in for this episode of the show. Today on the podcast, I am chatting with Caitlin Schauer. Caitlin is actually a friend of a friend. She is really good friends with Chelsea Brita, who I had on the podcast a couple of months ago when we first launched. And on that episode, Chelsea and I talked all about moon cycles. So both the moon in the sky and the cycle that we go through as women every 28 to 35 days with our menstrual cycle. And if you listen to that episode of the show, then you know that Chelsea and I did our 200-hour yoga teacher training program together in Bali in 2015. And since then, we've tried to get together pretty much every year. She's based in the US, I'm based in Canada, and we have visited quite a bit. And so I've met a lot of her friends, and that's where I connected with Caitlin. And one of the things that I love about Caitlin and her journey is that over the course of her life, she's just dove deeper and deeper into holistic health. And so on this episode, she shares that journey, what it was like stepping into the role of motherhood, and how getting whooping cough and breaking her leg was sort of this really low point for her where she said, enough is enough. I need to dive super deep into this. We talk about how detoxing glyphosate from her body and her children's bodies were really key for healing her gut health. We also talk about herbology, how to start making your own products, a little bit about foraging, and so much other great stuff. So I hope that you enjoy this episode as much as I did. And without further ado, here is Caitlin. Welcome to the podcast today, Caitlin. I'm super excited to have you here with me.
Thanks. I'm excited as well.
Yeah, I'm just really excited for this conversation and to be connecting with you after a couple of years of just kind of following along with your journey on Instagram. And firstly, I'd love for you to tell listeners where you're joining us from today.
I live in Livingston, Montana. It's about 30 minutes outside of Bozeman, Montana, and it's really close to the Gardner exit of Yellowstone National Park. So we're nestled in between lots of mountains and just beauty all around. The Yellowstone River is a couple of blocks from our house. So we live quite the lucky life out here.
Oh, amazing. That's such a beautiful part of the world in general, but definitely an amazing part and a special part of the United States. So yeah, you guys are definitely lucky to be there. And I'm curious if we can start by you telling me a little bit about your health and wellness journey and just how health and wellness kind of became important for you in your life.
Yeah, of course. It's been a long journey, really. So when I was in high school, I was a pretty healthy kid. You know, I had like some sinus infections and ear infections here and there, but overall pretty healthy, ate, the standard American diet. And then I went to college and, living on the college budget and the mass amounts of alcohol being consumed, lack of sleep and stress, my horrible diet, I started to get ulcers and way more sinus infections and ear infections. And I've always been more of a holistic style person. Like, when we were in high school, they really recommended the Gardasil vaccine. And I was like, no. Even though my mom was like, why would you not get this? And I couldn't ever really answer her why. So when I got really sick in college, and was just living on antibiotics, it felt like I was like, there's got to be a better answer than just a pill all the time. So I started to really look at my diet and realize that what I'm putting into my body is what I'm going to get out. So if I'm only putting in pizza and beer, I'm going to get out a pizza and beer lifestyle, which is, not good. So I pretty quickly, and within about 2 months after being sick quite a while, I took out meat, like all meats. And I did stick with fish every now and again, but nothing like shrimp or lobster or anything like that. It was just trout, salmon, halibut, those kinds of fish. And that really helped. That started to turn things around. So from there, I then just kind of really started to watch processed foods and stuff like that. I didn't really ever take alcohol out or dairy or gluten or anything like that. but my health started to turn around quite a bit. And then so I met my husband in college, and we went and worked at this place up in the mountains outside of Fort Collins, Colorado. It was called Pingree Park. Now it's Colorado State Mountain Campus. And you're living at 9,000 feet up there. So your body has to be functioning at its highest. And that is where I really started to see what diet can do and how it affects your whole being, like your gut, your brain, your everything. And I really started to dive into holistic medicine there, because there's so much to forage up there. I mean, even though you're at 9,000 feet, there's arnica and rose hips and wild yarrow and wild strawberries. There's just all of these things. And that's kind of where I started to get into herbs and supporting my health with that. So for pain relief and for cramps and things like that. And that's where my real passion started. And then, over the years, it kind of I would just self-study, read things when I could here and there, try to make my own stuff because I wanted to reduce my plastic waste. I wanted to not have any preservatives in the things that I was using. I didn't want aluminum in my deodorant. And once you dive down that rabbit hole, there's no turning back. It's like, wow, this is bad for me, and I've been using it every day, and this is bad. And it can get overwhelming at first too, because you just feel like there's no right way. There is nothing good for you in this world. So it's kind of hard, but it's all about finding that balance of what's going to work for you. And so then it kind of was just that for quite a while, where I was, vegetarian, eating pretty well, trying to do as much whole foods as I could. Then I got pregnant and had Rocco. Got married, had Rocco, and everything was really good with that. I gained a lot of weight with Rocco. So I struggled really bad after I had him with my body image, and just postpartum in general was really hard for me. They always say the baby blues or postpartum depression, but living through it, it's different than hearing about it. And a lot of times you don't think you have postpartum depression, or you don't think you have the baby blues, but looking back, it's easier to kind of see. Like for me personally, I definitely noticed that I did have postpartum depression, and I just was so in it that I didn't realize. So I started to support my mental health, and kind of, talk to more counselors and be more open with my husband about like being down or being sad. And the hardest part for me was actually reaching out for help, like feeling okay to ask for help. I think that's something that a lot of moms struggle with, is you want to be the best mom you can. And our society, asking for help is not labeled as a strong person. But what I learned is that it really is. So I think another huge part of health and wellness in general is your mental health. And so after that, I had Luca, my second child, and I worked out better, ate really well with him. And then Rocco's eczema started to show up right around the time that DeLuca was born, which was August of 2019. And it was really bad on his face, and it would just flare up really, really bad. So I was kind of starting to work on stuff like that. And then DeLuca and I got whooping cough in September. And then I broke my leg in November, and I needed surgery. So those two giant life events mixed with Rocco's eczema pretty much just hit fast forward on really implementing a holistic, healthy lifestyle. We ditched gluten, dairy, and eggs. And we try to do we try to get a good 70 to 30% raw to cooked foods. We really watch our meat. I'll do things like bone broth. We still do fish, but I really try to watch those. And that is where we really kind of started to notice a big difference. And then I found some of these health foods. It's called Purium. And they offer this product called Biomedic, which helps clear out all the glyphosate, which is the active chemical component in Roundup that blocks our gut. and it creates this like big sludge in there. So you can't properly absorb nutrients. And part of eczema is leaky gut, which glyphosate also has a huge factor in. And so I started on that stuff because I was on antibiotics and everything because of my leg. So, and then of course, Rocco's eczema. So we started this stuff, and it just, the gut mind connection was revealed to me through cleaning out my gut and making sure that that connection was there. And I had a healthy gut flora, and it was just mind blowing how it opened up my world. I would say, like, my husband and I's communication got better. We lost weight not in a bad way, in a healthy way. We got to, like, definitely the healthiest we've been in a really long time. Our brain fog is gone. My son's eczema is gone, and so we really cleaned up our diet. We started, only doing like homemade lotions, and we didn't really buy much out anymore. So like I said, it's been a really long journey, but it's little steps at a time that have gotten me to where I am today.
Yeah. Wow. That's such an incredible journey. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. And it's really interesting to hear how it was, these kind of little steps, but then it seems like since you've stepped into the role of motherhood, it's been just, fast forwarded, like you said, and there's been a lot of, contributing factors between getting whooping cough and then breaking your leg, which I just can't even imagine, doing all of that while trying to like parent two children. And I know you've been in and out of the hospital, and the fact that you've been able to improve your health throughout all of that is amazing, because I think for a lot of people, like, that would be, like, it's so hard to take care of ourselves sometimes, especially when we're not feeling well. So I think that that's just really inspiring to hear.
Well, thank you. That means a lot to me, because that was a really tough time for us, for sure. And then, like, I finally got the okay to move around and go about my life, and then COVID hit. So we were kind of quarantined since about the beginning of September until, a couple weeks ago. So it was really tough to just be at home and be sick for so long. It felt like, so on one hand, it was tough. On the other, it was a really good way for us to kind of create a clean slate.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you said it's glyphosate, or what is
glyphosate? Glyphosate. It's Glyphosate. And that's the active component in Roundup. So it's used on crops. It's genetically modified organisms. It is it's pretty much everywhere these days. You're not going to avoid it. If you're going out to eat, you're going to get it. If you're, not eating organics, you're going to get it. Cheerios have like an insane amount of glyphosate in it. If that's one thing you take away from this podcast, any mamas out there, please don't give your kids Cheerios as snacks. Like, just avoid them altogether, because glyphosate, what it's doing is it's creating this sludge, best way I can describe it, within our bodies, and it's just clogging everything up, especially our guts. And so our gut lining basically has this sludge on it, so you're not getting what you need from your food. Your body cannot absorb the nutrients that's in your food because the lining of your gut isn't allowing it. It's not permeable anymore. So that's why you constantly want more and more food. That's why you crave the sugars and the carbs and the dairy, because that's what's feeding those organisms that are able to live on that sludge. Whereas once you clean that out and you create a strong gut and you have that gut mind barrier back, your body is telling you, okay, I want more things like fruits and vegetables. And it's pretty amazing to watch once you take these foods out and once you do something to heal your gut, watching that transformation of what you're craving and how you're acting is absolutely incredible. So for us with Rocco, we did it because of his eczema, and of course we noticed his eczema clearing up. But as we watched his eczema cleared up, we watched temper tantrums disappear. We watched picky eating, which, like, I always thought picky eaters were made, not born, until I birthed one. Like he was born picky. Like I just couldn't believe it. So, and I always swear, I was like, I won't have a kid that's a picky eater. Well, I got one. So when we took all of those foods out that weren't benefiting him, like all he ever wanted was like mac and cheese and gummies and those quick foods. And as soon as we took that out, his everything changed. He just was able to process his feelings better. His temper tantrums went down, like I was saying. His reaction to something that he didn't like got better. It's just all around. It's been great. And he's been eating so much better, both amount and willing to try more things.
Yeah, that's incredible to hear. And this is so interesting because it seems like something that we should all, be aware of. And I mean, I had no idea about Cheerios, and I don't eat Cheerios. So thank God for that. And I don't have kids that eat Cheerios. So we're good there. But I'm sure that I'm, consuming lots of stuff with glyphosate in it and probably have that in my system just from, like you were talking about, I have a similar background in terms of drinking too much in college, not taking care of myself at that point in my life. So this is all really interesting to hear. And it's always interesting when I come across something where I'm like, why are we not talking about this more? Like, why isn't this something that I'm seeing more? There's lots of different things that I think have become kind of more mainstream with health. Like people know a lot more about, meat and picking good meat if you're going to choose to eat that, and that the side effects of dairy and gluten. But glyphosate sounds like something that we should be, screaming from the rooftops about.
Yes, exactly. It should. And like so many people just aren't aware of that. And they're also not aware. And I was one of them like a year ago, or even less, like I would even say 8 months ago. I had no idea. I mean, I always knew like, okay, organic, right? Okay, buy organic because there's not pesticides on it. But then when you start to really dig into why, and you get into the bottom of what these chemicals are doing inside of our body, is just, it's crazy when you start going down that rabbit hole, and just how we can clear ourselves up, and things that we thought, like for instance, my brain fog got a lot worse after I had kids. So I just chalked it up to mom brain. Everybody says that. Well, what happens is when you're pregnant, your gut flora is going to your child as well, like in utero, that your child is getting your gut flora. So if you have to, let's say, go on antibiotics during labor for if you have strep B or you have a C-section, that immediately swipes all of your gut flora and your child's, which immediately opens them up to so many more pathogens and leaky gut syndrome and things like that, which is another reason why so many kids are coming up with eczema these days, because our overuse of antibiotics. And then when you have a gut that doesn't have the good bacteria to fight stuff, and then you put this glyphosate directly onto that, your body, it's so hard for your body to recover or to flourish good bacteria. It's just going to want to flourish the bad, because it's easier, and that's what's happening with all of your cravings, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. That totally makes sense to me. And so what was the company you said that you found some supplements through that can help with clearing out glyphosate?
Yeah, so the company is called Purium, and you have to have a code from someone. And my sister-in-law introduced me to it right after we got whooping cough, because she had started on this journey, and she's like, I've never felt better. Like, you guys should try this. Your health needs it. And I was like, okay, yeah, send me them, because there's all kinds of different stuff that they offer. But she wanted me to do this. It's called the Power Shake, and it's super alkalizing, and the Biomedic, which helps clean up the glyphosate. And so we started that, and there's no turning back, So the company is Purium, Purium. And so you could like contact me. My friend Chelsea, how I know you, Chelsea, actually sells it as well. And then you can always just like go to their website and find somebody if you really wanted to, but it is life changing. I recommend it to everyone, and everyone that I know that's on it is like, everybody needs this. It's a gift because of how it changes your body, and you're able to like see what affects you, I think, is another thing when I noticed when I started alkalizing my body and getting rid of a lot of the acidic foods. And acidic foods are cooked meat, eggs, dairy. Those are like your top ones, obviously. And when you have an acidic environment in your body, that's going to allow for pathogens to survive and to grow, and cancers and mutated cells and things like that. Whereas when your body is alkaline, it's an environment that a lot of pathogens cannot survive in, and your cells are way less likely to mutate or be disrupted because they're getting what they need and they are living in the environment that they prefer, which is alkalinity.
Okay.
And
Awesome.
that's what Purium is like kind of striving to do. So it's really great stuff. It's awesome. I really like it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm going to check this out. And do you have any recommendations for like if somebody's looking at this, like where to start? Like, do you have like a go-to product or something like that that's a good place to start out?
I think it kind of depends on exactly what you're looking for. So I always try to promote somebody reaching out to either myself or Chelsea or somebody within the company, because I would say it depends on the person. But if you're going to get one thing from Purium, it would be the Biomedic, because that's what's going to clear out the glyphosate from your entire body. It's going to pull it from your tissues. It's going to pull it from your gut. And it is going to make it so that it's kind of killing the bad bacteria and helping the good bacteria flourish, so that you can have a stronger immune system, so that in like your gut produces 70% of the serotonin that's in your body. So that's that gut mind connection that I mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to start having your hormones be more leveled out in the way that they should be. And you're going to just all around feel better. And that's what the Biomedic is going to do. I highly suggest that one. And then the Power Shake, which is like all the greens that you could possibly ever need in one day. And it's super alkalizing. So I love that right in the morning, just to set my body off on an alkaline state the rest of the day. And then I crave the good stuff. So that's why I love that one, because I'm putting everything I need into it. I'm getting all the vitamins and nutrients and enzymes that I need. And then throughout the day, I'm like, oh, I want an apple instead of a candy bar. So that's how it's helped us too, with like sugar cravings and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I feel like it's like our taste buds and our bodies are really primed to crave good whole foods and vegetables and stuff like that. But the problem is that so many processed foods they study taste buds, right? They study taste. They study the effects of sugar on the brain. Like they're designed to make us want more and more of them, and they're designed to taste good. I mean, and if you have that, it's like you can't get your body to want celery over like a bag of gummy worms or something like that, because your brain is telling you those gummy worms taste better.
Exactly. And the other part to that too, that's such a good point. And I love that you noticed that. And then the pathogens within our gut that are the bad ones are craving the bad stuff. They live on sugar and they live on gluten and carbohydrates. So, and don't get me wrong, like carbs are good. I don't ever want to be like saying that I love carbs. They're good for you. Everyone needs them. But there's empty carbs in that processed food, like you were just saying. And that is those pathogens that are creating like candida, which is an overgrowth of yeast, basically. That's when you're going to crave sugar all day, every day. And that's what's going to have candida is going to cause those crashes that you feel at 2 or 3 in the afternoon, because you're fueling your body with stuff that's creating a roller coaster instead of a sustained energy. So it's just, starting to notice those patterns and notice that, like you said, like, you're craving what they want you to crave. You're going to, and processed food is cheaper. End of story. It's cheaper. So a lot of times it's hard to sit back and be like, why, how am I spending so much money when it's fruit and vegetables, and health can be expensive, but you have to just think about, is it worth it in the long run for you to fuel your body with the good versus the bad?
Yeah, that's a great point. And I'm glad you brought that up because that was actually one of the things I wanted to dive in with you, especially, having two small kids. And I know you make a lot of your own products and, healthy eating and living is really important to you. I mean, how do you kind of balance that all? I mean, one financially and just two with time, like having having kids that you need to take care of.
Yes, I love that you mentioned time, because I think that since having kids is where it's like, whoa, my days are so fast, and the time to do all of these things gets crazy. And what I've noticed is big batches, giant batches of stuff. One thing that we like to do is we have chickens. So a lot of the scraps go to them, but I'll save scraps and make a big batch of veggie broth probably every 2 weeks or something. And then I can freeze the jars, and I'll freeze them in little ice cube trays as well. And then you can just pop them out. So like if you need something with veggie stock, you can melt like 5 cubes and they equal 1 cup of veggie stock. So that's organic, homemade, whole food veggie stock without preservatives in it right there. And that's going to save that right there. When I started, that saved us probably 20 to 30 bucks a month. So it's little things like that add up. And then doing things like I make my own lotion, because A, they work better. B, there's no preservatives. There's no sulfates, phosphate, all that, blah, 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 any endocrine disruptors. So that has helped save us a lot of money as well. But I think really when it comes to the time, it's big batches of stuff.
Hey everyone, we're taking a quick break from the podcast to talk about Muse. Muse tracks your brain during meditation to give you real-time feedback on your meditation, guiding you into the zone and solving the major problem that most of us have when starting a meditation practice. Muse lets you know when you're doing it right. Your Muse headband basically acts like your personal assistant. While you meditate, Muse measures whether your mind is calm or active and translates that data into sounds. When you're calm, you'll hear peaceful sounds, and when your mind wanders, the sounds will intensify, guiding you back to a calm state. So if you're like me, where you have a really solid meditation practice and you love to do it every day or every couple of days, but sometimes you just find that you really can't get in the rhythm because your mind is so busy, Muse might be for you. The best part about this is that I have a 15% discount off just for listeners of Matcha Mornings. So head on over to bit.ly/Matcha Mornings Muse to get your discount. All right, back to the episode. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So doing stuff like, maybe setting like one day aside to kind of make a bunch of this stuff, or doing like you were talking about with the veggie broth. And do you batch like kind of meals as well? Like making meals that'll last a couple of days as opposed to having to need to like prepare fresh dinners every single day?
That's a good question. Normally I actually do prepare fresh dinners every day just because we're trying to get a lot of raw food. But what I'll do is I will sit down and plan my entire menu for the week, and I'll get stuff that overlaps or that I can use again. So like if I make rice on Monday for a Mexican dish, I'll make enough for it to last for Wednesday with an Asian dish, like do fried rice or something. And then that becomes an extra 30 minutes that I have on Wednesday that I don't have to make the rice.
If that totally makes sense. Yeah, it's actually it's kind of interesting because I feel like one of maybe the silver linings of this, COVID situation has been that we've been trying to go to the grocery store a lot less, and it's been nice because we've been meal prepping pretty much for, like 5 to 7 days, like planning out what we're going to have, writing down like all the ingredients that we need for that stuff, and then being able to do similar stuff like you're talking about, like, oh, okay, if we're going to have, this to eat this day, we'll make enough so there's leftovers for lunch the following day and stuff like that. And it's been great for budget, time, and, just like making sure that we're not just having those last minute, like, oh, we're kind of tired, we didn't prep for dinner tonight. We could either go to the grocery store or just like order Uber Eats or order pizza or something like that, which is both unhealthy and expensive.
Yes, exactly. exactly. That's something we had to really take a look at once we had kids, because we're all about going out to eat. It's one of our favorite things that we do. But once we had kids and kind of, taking kids out to eat it can be quite trying. And so we kind of try to limit our going out to once a week. And when you, like you were saying, when you menu plan and you meal plan, it becomes so much easier because you've got your plan out. And so it's just like, okay, Tuesday I'm making this. And there's no, well, I don't really have this, so I can't make this. And I don't have this, so I can't do that. Like, you have everything that you need for the week. It's there. No excuses. Just get it done, I guess.
Yeah, totally. I love that. And so one of the things I want to dive into with you as well is, this idea of making your own products. And something you said is when you were living outside of Colorado, you were foraging for stuff. I don't know a ton about foraging. I know the concept, but I've never really done it myself. So I'd love to hear kind of more about your experience learning about that, doing more of that yourself, and then diving a bit deeper into like herbal medicine and making your own products.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So like you brought up, it started when I lived outside of Fort Collins after college, and my husband, we were on a hike, and he's my boyfriend at the time, but whatever. So we were out on a hike, and I was wearing some Chacos that were relatively new. And I don't, any of you guys wear Chacos. When they're new, they really can cause some bad blisters. So I was like, I'm really having a blister. Like, it's really bad. We might have to turn around. And he leaned down and picked an arnica leaf and was like, here, just put this like right where your blister is, and it'll stop the rubbing, A, and B, it will like really help your blister. And I did that, and it did. It like stopped the burning, stopped the blister from forming. It was the best thing ever. So that was kind of my like starting down the hill of learning about all of this. And so it started with arnica, and then I realized that the flowers that grow with the arnica, which usually grow underneath big trees in the Rocky Mountain areas, just mountainous areas, those are super incredible to help with bruising and pain. So I started to make salves using the flowers, and I would just pick all the flowers, and you have to do it with gloves because if you don't, your fingers get real numb feeling, like tired kind of, if you can't use them all the way, because it is such a numbing agent, and it helps with bruising and opening up your vessels and your legs and your blood vessels and that kind of stuff. So just be really careful when you're working with arnica. So I started doing that. And then, rose hips, which are what's left over after the rose blooms. Those are full of vitamin C, and they're really amazing for anti-aging, for like your skin and stuff. So I would start picking rose hips and putting those in, like crushing them a little bit and putting them in oils and letting those macerate and sit for a couple months. And then you strain that, and then you can use that for like a beauty oil. If you wanted to do it for health reasons, for the vitamin C, you could make a tincture with them. You could just dry them and put them in teas. There's so many other things. On the side of rivers, there's what it's called horsetail, and it almost looks kind of like a baby bamboo in a way. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's tall, grass-like, but hollow in the middle. It's called horsetail, and that's really high in silica. So that's good for like hair, skin, nails, that kind of thing. Let's see, what else is there? And then there's all the other stuff like rosemary, thyme, wild strawberries you can forage for. Huckleberries are great to forage for. Cottonwood buds, those are great for your skin and healing. Usnea, that's like the lichen moss stuff that grows on trees in mountainous areas, and that's really good for your skin and wound healing. What else? Man, I could just go on for a long time. I feel like if I had the time to just sit down and really think about it.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that's really amazing to think about is the fact that, we have kind of all the medicine we need within the things that are naturally on our earth. And I think that that's something that I'm really interested in terms of, holistic health and wellness. But one thing I am curious about is, for somebody who's not familiar with this and they're like, okay, I like being outdoors. I would be interested in making my own stuff and learning more about this. Like, where do you start when it comes to learning about, these plants and how to use them and all that good stuff?
Yes, I love that. That is such a great question because I think it kind of depends on the person, and like how deep you want to go. But the best way I can say with today's day and age is go on Instagram and just follow a hashtag like holistic medicine or herbalism and see what other people are doing and see and how they're kind of going about it and see what sparks your interest. Is it foraging, or is it making stuff in your kitchen like tinctures and things like that? And then kind of start doing research there. But one of my favorite Instagrams is actually learning herbs, and they just have so many amazing free online classes, and they offer all kinds of stuff like that all the time. There's all kinds of those herbal places, but Pinterest even has a lot of information, but I would start small. Peppermint and rosemary and oregano, and see what those can offer and do for you. And then move up to the herbs you may not know, like cat's claw and black cohosh and astragalus and things like that. I know I definitely have like my top 5 herbs that I'm a big fan of that are always in my home. But if you're like really starting to want to learn more about herbology and stuff like that, I think you can learn a lot through social media these days, because the beauty of herbalism is that it's passed down. This is something that, the Native Americans have so much knowledge in, and Black culture has so much amazing stuff to offer in herbalism. And Indian culture, all of these different cultures, a lot of their medicine is rooted in herbology. So just leaning up into our elders and learning from others is truly, in my opinion, the best way to go about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's amazing. I love that. And I did check out that Instagram account. It is Learning Herbs. So I've gone and followed them. And it looks like it's amazing for just finding stuff out. And I think that it sounds like it's like there's a lot of information out there. So just starting to learn about the different plants, learning about the different herbs. And then I'm sure like most kind of health food, organic stores would sell this type of stuff in like bulk and stuff like that if you weren't quite comfortable with like foraging. Is that right?
Yes, definitely. And there's a lot of herbs that you can't really get foraging anyways, unless if you're in certain areas, like up here, arnica grows crazy up here, but you go down to Georgia and it's not going to be there, because it grows in the mountains. So it kind of also is where you are, and what you can forage for. So that's kind of another fun thing if you want to get into foraging, is learning what grows in your area. And a lot of times if you go to a bookstore, like I have Herbs of the Rocky Mountains, and there's all kinds of authors out there that have stuff on foraging in certain zones and areas. So that's also something to look into for sure. But yes, I get probably 80% of my herbs and stuff to make tinctures and stuff from local apothecaries, local health food stores. And if they don't have it, and usually I'll ask them to get something before I even go online, because of course I want my money to go local. So I will ask them, and if it's something that they can't get, then I'll go online to like Rocky Mountain Herbs, or there's a couple other herbology stores online that you can kind of search for, and those you can order big, massive stuff from. Like I always end up ordering my calendula online. And that's an herb that's really good for moisturizing the skin.
Okay,
So,
awesome. Yeah, that's great
yeah.
to know. And then, so we've kind of talked about like, I guess a couple different products, like you've mentioned tinctures, oils, like I'm sure like lip balms and lotions and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
What's like a good place to start if somebody's like, okay, cool, I'm convinced I'm going to make something, like what should I make?
Yes. First of all, I want to say good for you for trying. That's like the best way to start. Because just get in the kitchen and play. So I would say the best way to start is stuff that's going to go on your body. Don't start with going in, because the ratios and everything like that can get really tricky, and you should weigh your herbs. It shouldn't be like a tablespoon style thing. It should all be by weight if you're going to ingest. So I really suggest starting with like lotions or deodorant or face salves, oil rubs, chapsticks, those kinds of things, because those are pretty easy to make. There's a ton of recipes online, and you're going to know if it doesn't agree with you pretty quickly, and it's going to just be on your skin, as opposed to if it doesn't agree with you and it's in your body.
That definitely makes sense. I think that's a good place to start, especially when I think about myself. I'm like so bad at measuring. I'm like, yes, starting on the outside is better than the inside.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's really fun to start playing with that. And all you need is your like certain bases, and you can do so much. So I usually work with coconut oil, cocoa butter, shea butter, vitamin E, witch hazel, aloe. Those are usually in all of my base stuff. And then you can do wonders from there. You could make something that is just for aches and pains with essential oils and arnica and calendula, or you could make something that's super moisturizing and gentle for kids like with eczema, or you could make anti-aging face cream with shea butter and frankincense and rose hips, so, and it's all based on like, just kind of doing some reading, doing some digging, seeing what you can find and what you want. Like my biggest suggestion is to look at what you use every single day that you would rather have as a product that you could make that is safe. So like for me, I started with deodorant actually, because I just did not want to have aluminum right next to one of my lymph nodes, my axillary lymph node right there. So I chose to start making deodorant, and I did coconut oil and arrowroot powder, and that felt gritty to me. And, just like over the years, I actually ended up making a formula that's spray. It's rubbing alcohol, witch hazel, a little bit of aloe, vitamin E, and then essential oils, whichever ones you prefer. Like I make one for my husband that's way more manly smelling, and then I use one that's like lavender and ylang ylang and geranium, So, and that one's fun because it dries fast. It doesn't leave any marks. I don't smell, and it's not like gritty underneath my armpits. So, I would that's my biggest suggestion, is to just kind of like look at your life, look at what you want to replace, and go from there.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And I love, how simple this sounds. Like, I think that sometimes we think about, the idea of making like my own lotion or deodorant or lip balm is going to be like really hard. So I'll just go buy one that's from the supermarket. And, obviously something from the supermarket that comes in a package that's pre-made is going to be very convenient, but it seems like this is actually not that hard to get started with.
Yeah, it's really not. Like the hardest part in all reality is getting all of the ingredients. That is by far the hardest part. Once you have those ingredients, it is a walk in the park. And like I said, big batch. So if it's something like lotion that you're going to put on every single day, make a big batch of it and do 2 things. And then, you're set for quite a while, and your stuff isn't going to have those preservatives in it. It's not going to have fake fragrance. It's not going to have endocrine disruptors. It's just going to be so much better for you. And I promise you, when you put that lotion on your body, it's going to just feel better because you made it. It's safe. So you just feel better. Like every time I put lotion on my kids, I'm not like, ugh, what's in this? Is this bad? Is there something in it? I know exactly what's in it.
Right. When it comes to making products for kids, is there any like considerations or things you have to kind of be cautious about?
I personally am really cautious with essential oils. I always 100% dilute them. And there are certain essential oils that you cannot use on kids. I would just Google, because there's quite a few, and see which ones they can and can't have. Like they definitely cannot have wintergreen or eucalyptus. And so I avoid those. I never ingest essential oils either. If you choose to do that, I would really prefer, do a lot of research about that. I know a lot of my friends, they love ingesting essential oils, and I don't, good for them. That's awesome. Do what works best for you in your life, but just be careful. With kids, the only other thing is, know your kid. Like some kids have skin allergies, so just be mindful of what you're buying and where you're buying it. But otherwise I don't use anything that could be too irritating. Try not to do too much lavender around kids, especially boys, because they've been finding that a mass amount of lavender actually stimulates estrogen. So it's kind of messing with the hormone balance of estrogen, testosterone in men and young boys. So I would watch any like extreme amounts of lavender. And that goes for like buying products as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would imagine in general, there's probably like less considerations in terms of making stuff outside of the essential oils, which I have heard before, as opposed to like going to, your local pharmacy, because there's going to be so much stuff, like so much preservatives and so much stuff that you just can't pronounce. Like, I feel like sometimes when I look at skincare products or, pharmaceuticals, I mean, food even too, it's like, what even is this word? Like, I don't even know what this is.
Yes, exactly. And you're like supposed to be just putting this on your body. And something else to consider with like your skin, it is your biggest organ. That whatever you put on your skin is being absorbed and going into your bloodstream. So if you're looking at that label and you can't pronounce it, do you really want it in your body too? So that's something, it's like I said earlier, it's that rabbit hole. Once you're going down it, it's crazy. And then it just makes you want to make these products and try your best to make sure you know what you're putting in and on your body.
Yeah, 100%. I remember when I was first learning about this, I guess maybe 6 or so years ago, I think deodorant was one of the first things I learned about. And, I'd never considered the fact that like antiperspirant was bad for you. Like, I'd never thought about the fact like, oh, my body is designed to sweat. There's a reason why it does that. Therefore, I should probably let it do that. I just, was in my early to mid 20s, and sweating in your shirt is not something that's like super appealing when you're out at the bar. And I just used the products that prevented me from doing that, and it was very much like aesthetic. And then I learned about the impacts of aluminum and our glands being right there, and I was like, oh my gosh, like what am I doing? And then it kind of just was a deep dive from there in terms of like, oh, and I'm using all these other products with colors and shades and sparkles on them, and the stuff that's just doesn't need to be on my body in any way.
Yes, exactly. So you said that perfectly. And I also really liked your point with like, when you are out at the bars and you're sweating, it's like society says, ew, you shouldn't be sweating. You shouldn't have sweat stains. So, in our girl brains, it's like, oh, I'll buy the antiperspirant so that I don't have those sweat marks. But what sweat's actually saying is like, I have a healthy functioning body. My body's detox pathways are open because I'm able to sweat. It's such a good thing. And with all these years of antiperspirant and the societal norms of it's not okay to sweat, people have evolved to like actually not sweat. And it's clogging up our bodies because we cannot get the toxic stuff out.
Yeah. I remember too when I switched over to like a natural deodorant that didn't have aluminum in it. I smelled terrible for a while, like to the point where I mean, I was working in retail at that point. It's like really not kind of appropriate to smell bad when you're at work. And I was showering, like I wasn't unhygienic. And it was to the point where I was like, man, I don't know if I can like push through this. Like, I think I might need to go back to the other deodorant. And then after doing some Google searching, it was like, it will clear out. Like, it's just your body, like your glands are like clearing out like the stuff that it hasn't been able to clear out as you've been wearing antiperspirant. And I was like, I've been wearing antiperspirant for, I mean, it must have been like probably close to 10 years, maybe a little bit less than that, maybe like 7 or 8 years. But that's a long time to not let your body kind of do what it's naturally designed to do.
Yes. So that you said that so perfectly, because it builds up, and you can't get this out. And like you're saying, it does it. When I switched, I smelled horrible. Like my mom was like, "You need to do something. Like you are horrible." Because I came back and visited from college, and she's like, "Geez, you just go to college to become a hippie." And it's like, well, no, I'm allowing my body to do what it needs to do. And it's getting rid of all this stuff that's been trapped in here for too long. And it's a little bit of a, not, I don't want to say trial and error, but learning curve, I guess, maybe to get through the stenchy part. And then once you do, everything feels better too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. And it goes away. Like you get into the natural rhythms of, how your body naturally smells, which I think if you're eating pretty clean and exercising regularly and stuff like that, like I find that on a day-to-day basis, I don't really smell bad, assuming that I have proper hygiene. So yeah, it does good. That period does go away. For anyone listening who's like, oh my God, I cannot do it. I mean, one, now is a great time to do it because most of us are still at home, but two, it does pass. Like it does go away.
It does. Yes, it does go away. And it actually, in my opinion, it gets better, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, you're flushing your body of all that stuff. And so, there's those couple times where maybe I would forget deodorant and it would smell really bad. But now if I forget deodorant, it's fine. It's not a big deal because my body is functioning the way that it should.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think too, one thing that's really interesting that I've just kind of found over the years since I have been, using more natural deodorant and stuff like that is I feel like it's very much a sign from your body if like your BO is off. Like if you have like a bad scent coming out of your armpits when you're sweating, like to me, that's been like my body giving me a signal like, oh, something's off with your hormones or, you're not eating properly. Like to me, it's like my body being like, hey, we're giving you like a message that something is wrong. Like kind of the same way you can look at like the color of your urine or like, the state of your poop and stuff like that. It's like just another sign from your body like, hey, our internal environment is not good here. Please change something.
Yes, exactly. Yes, I love that you notice that and you're observant of that and you're so in tune with your body that you notice that because that's exactly it. And if we could all just get to that point where we're listening to our bodies and they always say trust your gut, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I would always say that and listen, but it becomes so much more clear when your body is functioning the way it wants to at its highest level and you have that gut mind connection again and you have that ability to notice what's going on with your body that like you said, oh, my body's telling me something right now. Like you have to work through and get to this point and it is years. Like I don't want people to think that I just like, oh, this just happened overnight. Like we said at the beginning, like this has been like a 10-11 year journey for me. And that is my biggest recommendation is just go slow. And then you'll be able to stay in tune with your body more than if you were to just change all of this overnight.
100%. And I think too, like part of, I think what we've both mentioned is like, you kind of don't know what you don't know when you start out. Yes. And then it's like, once you know, you can't unknow. So it's like, you'll discover more stuff as you go down this path. I think like, I just learned recently about glyphosate and that's something that I'm really curious to learn more about now. Like there's always something else you can be discovering and you don't have to fix everything overnight. Like it'll come with baby steps and little changes over time.
Exactly. And you start researching one thing and you'll implement that change and then that'll bring something else in. And it's just this slow ebb and flow, and it comes into your life and it goes back out and it comes in and goes out. And over time, you're going to weed out what doesn't suit you and you're going to bring in what does suit you. And your whole energy is going to change and the way you look at things is going to change. And it's just a really awesome process to go through. And it's like you said, it's baby steps. And that's the best way to put it. It's little itty baby steps that amount to a great big change.
I love that. I couldn't have said that better myself. And so with that, I'm curious, do you have any other, tips, words of wisdom for people who are setting out on their health journey? Anything else you want to share today?
So I would definitely say, go slow and give yourself grace. Like no one is perfect. I still eat crap food. Like I literally last night I had some dairy-free ice cream. Was it the best thing for my body? No. Am I going to beat myself up over it? No. It's okay. Go slow. Give yourself grace. You'll get to where you need to go. And the other thing I say is, you're going to read so much and one person's going to say mushrooms are good for you and one person's going to say mushrooms bad for you. So when you start diving deep into this and you start to like really go down that rabbit hole, just always refer back to yourself and what you think is best for you. Like for me, I love mushrooms. I incorporate mushrooms into so many parts of my life. Not only medicinal mushrooms, but just like plain Jane white button mushrooms. I like them. Maybe they don't have that much nutrition to them, or maybe they can do A, B, or C, but I like them. They don't bother me. So that's still in my diet. And I think that you just have to take all this information and filter it through your own brain and see what's going to work best for you. That's one thing. And then the biggest piece of advice that I have for this goes for everybody, but especially new moms, is stand up for yourself. You know your child and yourself best. Don't let somebody tell you, even if it's like your best friend, don't let them tell you something that you don't agree with, and stand up for yourself. You know you, and you know your child, or you know you best.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are two really great pieces of advice. And yeah, I mean, I don't have kids right now, so I can't speak personally to like the side of being a mother, but I do see stuff online where, it seems like there's so many great supportive communities and networks of, mamas working together, supporting one another. But there's also, a lot of unsolicited advice and shame and blame. And I think just like our own health journeys, like people are doing the best that they can with the information that they have. And if you see somebody doing something that maybe you think they could do it different, I mean, education is great, but don't tell people what to do. Like, that's just not cool at all.
Exactly. Yeah. And don't let your doctor even tell you what to do. If you don't agree with your doctor, find one that does agree with you. Like I take a very different approach towards vaccines than a lot of people do. And so I searched around for quite a while to find a doctor that would support me in my choices for vaccines for my child. And I do a totally different path than, I space them out. They get certain ones, they don't get certain ones. And it took me a while, but once I found that doctor, I know without a doubt she's going to support me, and she is going to be the best doctor for my kids, because her and I can discuss things, and she can tell me her point of view and I can tell her mine, and we can usually meet in the middle. So make sure that you find a doctor that works with you, and that's not telling you. A doctor should never make you feel any lesser of a person, or like you don't know what you're talking about, because no one knows you like you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. And I think that goes like, even if you don't have kids, like if you feel like there's something going on with your body, I feel like fight for what you need from your doctor. And if your doctor is not hearing you, listening to you, on the same page as you, it's time to move on. I mean, I had a situation with this with my family doctor just recently, where I was just like, you know what, enough is enough. You're not listening to me. I know my body. I know that this is like what's best for it. And I'm not going to like come in and see you if you're just going to make me feel like bad about the choices I'm making, when I know the things that I'm doing are better than what you're telling me to do. Like,
yes,
I know.
Exactly. Yes. I love that you stood up for yourself. Good for you, because that's a hard life lesson to learn if you don't do it, because it could put you in a place where you don't want to be. And like, follow your gut. If you don't think you should be on a pill for something, don't start it, because once you start pills, a lot of times it's a lot harder to come back off of them, or do a ton of research, find a natural way for it, because I promise you 9 out of 10 times there is a natural avenue to try first. The pills aren't going anywhere. Try the natural stuff first. If that doesn't work, then you can go to the pill, or whatever your Western medicine doctor is suggesting. But it's always worth getting a couple opinions and searching for the best answer for your problem.
Mm-hmm. I 100% agree. And I think too, like one of the things I've heard is like, don't WebMD your symptoms or don't Google things. But personally, like Google is a very, very helpful resource, I think, to most of us. Like, I don't expect a general practitioner to know every single thing that's going on with every single person's body. And I think that if you know your body, like look up the things that are going on, see if you can find some information on that. And, obviously I'm not a medical professional, so this isn't like, professional advice, but just from my experience personally, like I think it's just as helpful for me to look and see, oh, is there a tea that can help with this, or a herb or a plant or something I could be doing to shift my diet? Is there a book that I could read? Is, there's something I could learn about sleep? Like some of those basic things can really help, as opposed to just going to the doctor and being like, oh, I have this going on. And then maybe there's like a prescription for it or something like that.
I totally agree with you. Yeah. I know, yeah, like you said, a lot of people say don't Google or this, that, but I just like you said, I usually do. And I try to find something that I can try first that's natural, that I can get to in my hot hands. And I'd rather do that first than go to the doctor. Because in my experience, most of the time they recommend, something over the counter or a prescription that we don't always know what those are doing to our body in the long run. Like Advil was always so highly recommended. Well, then they found out that it was destroying our stomachs and the gut lining that we have. So, it's all, again, ebb and flow, learning, implementing what works for your life, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree with that. And I have just loved this conversation. Seriously, I could talk to you all afternoon about this stuff. Kate, it's been great catching up. Last question for you. If people want to learn more about you, maybe follow along with your journey, where can they go to find that?
Yeah. So I'm on Instagram. I have my personal, which is Kate, CAIT.Schauer, which is SCHAUER. I share a lot of my personal stuff on there. What I'm doing day to day, just my little things that I do to, reduce my waste, my plastic, or how I cook something. And then I have my Pejula Arts, which is PEJULA. And then space ARTS. And that is where I share a lot of my herbal knowledge, my holistic medicine, my herbology, my tincture stuff, all of that kind of stuff is shared more on the Pejula Arts. But either one, you're going to get a taste of who I really am. So that's where I do most of my sharing.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I'll make sure there's links for that. And yeah, thank you again for your time today and for this conversation.
Oh my gosh, thank you. I'm so glad you reached out, and I loved chatting with you, and I love your mindset on everything and your willingness to learn. I love it. I admire it, and I think it's inspiring.
Yeah, 100%. You too.
All right. Well, you have a good day.
All right, friends, I hope that you enjoyed that episode of the podcast with Caitlin Schauer. Make sure you go check her out on Instagram. I've put links to all of that in the show notes. It's over at wanderbarn.com/Caitlin, CAITLIN. And I also wanted to just chat briefly about the products that she brought up in the early episode of the show, Purium. She actually gave me $50 off to try the products. I've been trying them over the last couple of months. They are super awesome for clearing out and detoxing glyphosate out of your diet. So if you guys want to check those out, you can head on over to the show notes, and there's a link in the show notes, wanderbarn.com/Caitlin, to get $50 off as well. So go check that out. And of course, if you have any questions about Purium or glyphosate, make sure that you're reaching out to Kate. All right. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you soon. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Matcha Mornings. To find links mentioned in this episode, show notes, photos, and more, head on over to wanderbarn.com/podcast/matcha-mornings. To be the first to know about brand new episodes of Matcha Mornings, subscribe on your podcast app. If you enjoyed this episode of the show, please leave a review or send me an email at wanderbarn@gmail.com with the subject line Matcha Mornings. To follow along with me, Amanda Kingsmith, you can find me on Instagram at Amanda Kingsmith to learn more about other fun projects I'm working on. To find more great podcasts like this one on topics such as travel, the business of yoga, cryptocurrency, and more, head on over to wanderbarn.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you soon.